argument of intimidation is when somebody intimidates you in an argument with referring to experts being so much smarter than you, or an authority is above you, so shut up and sit in line and obey, or it's an argument of intimidation that will kind of do an ad hominem attack of kind of moralizing to you, telling you you are bad. So it's not coming from a discussion of the ideas, but an insistence on making you cower and feel guilt, feel shame, and overall feel like you don't know anything, you're bad, you need to have doubt and guilt and worry. And the people that use the argument of intimidation are revealing because they are pummeling you with intimidation tactics, but you might ask them a question and they won't answer that. It's always staying in this line of intimidating you into submission. So how do you argue with somebody who is using this tactic? The most important thing to do when someone argues from intimidation is to not be intimidated and to not cower or kind of accept that their perception of you is true, and to just calmly assert that your opinion is valid. And now, for example, this comes into play with a recent interaction I had on Twitter. Of course, the mecca of wonderful arguments filled with decency and tact. But anyway, what was happening was I made a comparison to the narcissistic traits in Andrew Tate and Amber Heard, which I've been doing for a while because to me, their textbook, it's really not anybody that has a modicum of knowledge in the textbook narcissistic traits can recognize it in both of them because they're grandiose. And the way that they both misrepresent their cases, the way they both lie about the small things and lie about the big things, and the way they deflect responsibility, and the way they will self-snitch but not seem to realize because of arrogance. Because Amber Heard has tons of video recordings of her revealing herself as an abusive perpetrator, and Andrew Tate has videos of him revealing himself as a complete psychopathic human trafficker who gets off on coercing, manipulating, and controlling men and women. Anyway, so what happened was I said they're both textbook narcissists, and then I got into an interaction where somebody just kept using the argument of intimidation. So first it was intimidating me by making me bad for believing that Amber Heard and Andrew Tate could both be narcissists, because she believes that contrast, the Andrew Tate is just so much worse than Amber Heard. And I said, well, I'm not really comparing the worst, I'm just saying that they're both have traits of narcissism that is abundant, and in how they deflect, it's similar. And then she started to say that I was wanting Amber to be abused by Andrew Tate, because she went back into my tweets and saw that I had a post that was like, what would happen if these two dated? They would have to get past their control issues, and maybe they would get past the posturing and the mask, and maybe something would happen. So it was kind of me speculating on what happens when two of the same type of narcissists who need control and manipulate, what happens in a relationship? Could they get past their bravado and their mask and posturing to be better? I mean, it's just a question. And so then she was just keen on trying to intimidate me by this kind of guilt and shame and intimidation, ad hominem kind of arguing of, you're bad, you believe this, and telling me what I believe in this. I said, no, it's really simple. My argument's valid, and it's supported by a judge and jury that Amber Heard is not a credible, didn't have a credible testimony. Many people had a default idea that Johnny Depp was the abuser and she was the victim, and then they watched the trial in full, and then once they saw her testimony and evidence presented in the case, then they came to realize, I came to realize, oh, I don't find her credible, I believe she's the perpetrator. So in this argument of her just trying to constantly make me bad, I just kept saying, I have a valid argument. I watched the entire trial and I've listened to long form recorded conversations between the couple that really give you a sense of the dynamic, and you see how she deflects and belittles him, and just that kind of word salad, circular, those kind of ways of arguing that you really come to understand if you've been in people with dark triad traits. There's a circular word salad way of speaking. So anyway, so then this exchange, it was strange because see, I didn't have a defensiveness or worry, because I just thought, look, I watched the trial, I listened to these recordings, you think differently, okay, you think I'm bad for thinking that Amber Heard is a narcissist, and that I said that both Tate and Amber are narcissistic. Like, to me, it's really pretty. It only takes a very, very basic understanding of those kinds of dark triad narcissistic psychopathic traits to recognize it. And if you don't recognize it, that's fine. Like, I don't really care to like sit and crucify you and convert you, but she had a need to crucify, and she kept coming back. And I kept responding too, because I thought, I'm not going to be pummeled. And then I would say, I think what really helps when you have people coming at you and they're determined to make you bad, and to constantly remember that to remember why you have the opinion you do, is to repeat why you have it, and to say that it's valid, and to say that your argument's valid too, coming from your perception. This is what I did to reach my perception. Not trying to convert you or crucify you, I'm just stating how I know what I know, and you can take it or leave it, because then there was the shaming of acting as though I'm irresponsible, and you wanting her to be abused. I'm like, no, none of that's true. And then saying that I lack responsibility and empathy. It's like, no, I'm commenting on people who lack that, and observing it and offering analysis. I'm not really I mean, to me, the need for you to make me bad is more revealing than just my observations on public figures. And so when you're in that kind of situation, hold your own, and there's something kind of interesting when you really do have that neutrality, and you know that there's something going on with them and their need to make you bad, and to do that ad hominem, and to intimidate, and to simply say, and I tried to even validate her at times and be like, I can see where you come to this. If I hadn't listened to those recorded conversations, I would probably have that default view. Like, when people are intimidating you, they're trying to bully you into feeling bad for having an opinion that is valid and gained from exposure to listening to conversations, watching a trial. There's really nothing that they can shake when you feel that that's the truth, and you've observed it, and then they kind of do that. Then she started doing the like, well, you're not a legal expert, you're not this, and I was like, well, I watched the trial with my sister. She's a lawyer, so she has a legal expert and seemed to also believe that Amber Heard was not credible. There's a criminal lawyer mini podcasts that were, Bruce Rivers and the law guy. There's a lot of legal Twitter or legal YouTubers who have law degrees in criminal law, who analyzed the trial just for fun, and also thought, wow, here are the moments when she's absolutely lying about little things and then lying about big things, like they would talk about it. So I don't really understand, like all these appeals to authority, they don't jolt you when you have self-trust, because you have observed reality and you have that perception, and it's okay that the other person doesn't. Maybe they just weren't, like I said, I was pretty obsessed with the trial because I had just gotten out of a kind of emotionally abusive dynamic. So for me, it's really cathartic. So I was just constantly absorbing a lot of content with it. A lot of people aren't going to do that. So I get it. You may not be as well versed and familiar, but for me, I heard long form. I came to my conclusion. I believe my conclusion's valid. My conclusion is supported by the majority of the public watching, the majority of the lawyers that watched, and the judge and jury themselves. So I'm not going to be intimidated into submitting to you with this kind of like, oh, I'm so bad. Like, no, it's how people argue. It's the same kind of argument that people use that with COVID. It's like, you are a horrible person, you need to listen to the experts. And it's like, no, I have a valid, if I don't want to do something, I am valid in choosing that, whether I give you the reason why or I don't, or I have a reason to simply wait and hesitate and observe because of what I know about how long typically medicines get to be tested to go to market. It's usually 10 to 15 years. So I am valid in wanting to wait, in wanting to see, in observing reality as I see it, and saying no just because what experts are wrong over and over. Experts used to believe that lobotomies were ideal for mental illness. So there are a lot of things that we think that experts say are later on regarded as absolutely horrific or completely blind or delusional, stupid. So the appeal to experts only shows the arguer's lack of self-trust, because they are using that as their basis. Whereas if they had trust in themselves, they would talk about why they had the opinion, not why they were told that opinion by a bunch of experts or authorities. So being able to argue is a skill, and being able to argue and not get pulled into somebody that is often trying to get you to actually just get reactive. The best course of action is to validate yourself and say why you believe what you believe, and say that remain respectful. Say that you believe that they say that their belief is valid, but maybe they need to like realize that people don't have to be bad if they disagree with you. Because there's people that, with Andrew Tate, they're sucked in, they don't see that he is bad, and that doesn't mean that they're bad. Like, it could be, like, I can get sucked into that idea that, well, if you don't see it now, then you're evil. Well, for me, it's like pretty obvious that Amber Heard is bad and has those kinds of dark triad, manipulative, abusive Darvo tactics, and as does Andrew Tate. And if you don't care, if you want to argue with me about that, that's fine. You're valid, I'm valid, but making me bad in that constant intimidation isn't going to be effective. Like, I know myself, I know what I think. You're the one that has the need to crucify in order to feel good about being right. So, like they say, fanatics often, they actually have repressed doubt about what they believe, because they have to like constantly assert it and be fanatical and be dogmatic in this kind of crucify, convert people way, and that's revealing. So anyway, if you're arguing, note that the argument of intimidation is not an argument, and it's when people watch it from the outside, they can see very clearly that who is the person that is staying reasonable and simply, the other person is pummeling with bow, bow, bow. Because you see that with mobs, it's like bow down. So, when you're in that situation, you can answer calmly, but then it's often best to just exit, because that person sometimes just keeps coming at you. And you just have to go with no response to leave in grace. So I hope that was helpful. You see the argument of intimidation a lot too. As a kid in school with the teacher will try to intimidate you with the I'm older, parents, I'm older, I know best, but they don't say why they know. You just do this because I say so. That's an argument of intimidation as well. So, hope this is helpful.